it's day 2 of Prime Minister Modi's visit to the United States here. He's all set to meet with the American President Joe Biden for bilateral talks today. And this is going to be the first in-person meet that is to take place between the two leaders. And top of the agenda, of course, is going to be the current Afghanistan security-related situation, the crisis, dismantling global terror networks, among other issues. Prime Minister Modi earlier already having met with the US Vice President Kamala Harris, and the Quad Group meet, which has to take place later tonight as well. This is going to be between the 4 nations there, the United States, Japan, Australia and India. Before that, Prime Minister Modi is also having to meet with the Australian and Japanese Prime Ministers and discussed already strategic cooperation into the Indo-Pacific region.
अमेरिका के राष्ट्रपति के घर के बाहर यानी वॉशिंगटन के व्हाइट हाउस से ये वो जगह है जहां पर आज प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी और अमेरिकी राष्ट्रपति जो बाइडेन की मुलाकात होनी है और इस मुलाकात को लेकर बहुत गहमा गहमी है पूरी दुनिया में। पाकिस्तान से लेकर चीन, अफगानिस्तान से लेकर तालिबान और दूसरे देश तक ये देखना चाहते हैं कि आखिर ये दोनों राष्ट्र प्रमुख जब मिलते हैं, पहली बार मिलते हैं, क्योंकि इससे पहले जब जो बाइडेन से मुलाकात हुई थी तो वो उपराष्ट्रपति थे, लेकिन प्रधानमंत्री नरेंद्र मोदी से जो बाइडेन की ये पहली मुलाकात होने जा रही है। और इसमें क्या होगा, क्या निकल कर आएगा, इस पर हमारी नजर रहेगी। ये तस्वीर देखिए अमेरिका की, अभी अभी यहां सुबह हुई है और ये सुबह बड़ी खूबसूरत नजर आ रही है अगर आप इस लिहाज से देखें कि कैसे सूरज की रोशनी जो है वो व्हाइट हाउस पर धीमी सी पड़ रही है। एक सुनहरी तस्वीर निकल कर आ रही है सुबह सुबह। लेकिन क्या जब दोनों राष्ट्र प्रमुख मिलेंगे तो भी इतनी ही सुनहरी तस्वीर भारत और अमेरिका के रिश्तों के लिए, इतनी ही सुनहरी तस्वीर दुनिया के लिए निकल कर आएगी? आज ये सबसे बड़ा सवाल है। क्या पाकिस्तान का मुद्दा उठेगा? कल तो उठा जब उपराष्ट्रपति कमला हैरिस से मुलाकात हुई, लेकिन क्या आज भी उठेगा? कितने गंभीरता से उठेगा? अमेरिका के लिए तस्वीर बदल चुकी है। वो अफगानिस्तान में अपने सैनिकों को वहां रखने पर पाकिस्तान के सहयोग के लिए मजबूर नहीं है। तो क्या भारत एक नया आयाम जो है वो गढ़ सकता है अमेरिका के साथ मिलकर आतंकवाद को खत्म करने को लेकर, तालिबान को लेकर, अफगानिस्तान को लेकर? दोनों देशों को कैसे साथ चलना होगा? कोरोना के संकट के बाद जब अर्थव्यवस्थाएं फिर से खड़ी हो रही हैं, उसमें भारत और अमेरिका की भूमिका क्या होगी? वैक्सीनेशन को लेकर क्या होगा? दूसरे क्षेत्रों को लेकर क्या होगा? डिफेंस सेक्टर को लेकर क्या होगा? क्वाड का क्या होगा? ऑकस का क्या होगा? ये तमाम ऐसी बातें हैं जिस पर आज भारतीय प्रधानमंत्री चर्चा करने वाले हैं। इंडियन डायस्पोरा का यहां पर एक कार्यक्रम भी रखा गया है। आपको बताऊं, क्योंकि प्रधानमंत्री का कार्यक्रम कोरोना काल की वजह से बहुत सीमित रहा, इस बार वो भारतीयों से उतना नहीं मिल पाए एयरपोर्ट को छोड़कर, लेकिन आज वो जो एक कसक है यहां के भारतीयों के बीच के हम प्रधानमंत्री को देख नहीं पाए, मिल नहीं पाए, वो आज दूर होगी और यहां पर वो कार्यक्रम होगा। कई भारतीय भी यहां पर आने वाले हैं।
Times Network, Sushant, getting us the highlight on, in fact, what to take into account on what's going to be on the top agenda here, not just with that one-on-one bilateral, not just with respect to meeting with the Quad leaders here, but also with respect to interactions that Prime Minister Modi is to have with the NRIs there as well, as he was in fact emphasizing on that the pandemic had restricted all such nature of interactions here, but there is going to be an interaction with the NRIs living and based in the United States here as well. But let's in fact get you up to date on what are we expecting in this one-on-one meet. This is important to note that this is a crucial in-person meet here, and top of the agenda is going to be global terror, the Afghanistan triggered crisis, all also aiming at bolstering trade and security ties between the two nations here. This is also for all 4 leaders of United States, India, Japan and Australia. It's also going to be their first in-person Quad summit as well, and this is going to be a meet, interestingly, amidst fresh developments, rise of China and the Taliban crisis. On the agenda, of course, COVID is most certainly going to be there now. Vaccine diplomacy is going to be there here as well, because several nations have built up their own rules. Many are out with vax passports in ascertaining who's allowed to enter. and which vaccines are allowed to be used for travelers here. All of that. We're going to be taking up one-on-one on each of these details here. Vinay Tiwari connected with us here on a larger insight on those things here. Vinay, first, of course, the immediate focus, of course, this in-person, one-on-one bilateral between Prime Minister Modi and the US President Joe Biden.
Yes, I mean, look, I think the most important part is the first time that we are meeting Joe Biden personally face-to-face, and that is significant because India has had a particular relationship with his predecessor, Donald Trump. And subsequent to Mr. Biden's residency into the White House, there was a little bit of a thaw in the relationship, so to speak. We had a very different approach to the U.S. policy. The U.S.'s approach towards Indian foreign policy was a little different. So in that sense, this is a bit of an icebreaker that could possibly will happen. I think the other big importance is that in the last 1.5 years of pandemic, when most face-to-face meetings have not happened at the global level, the world has undergone a change which is beyond the recognition. I mean, of course, the huge economic losses that the world has faced, including India, and the revival of the economy being one such factor. But even the strategic and the geosecurity matters have also undergone a huge change with the U.S. withdrawal in Afghanistan and its consequent impact upon India. Also remember, we've also faced a very hostile China in the last couple of years or so, especially in the last 1.5 years. And that would obviously be one of the important points to discuss because a lot is happening on the front of China, not just with India, but also the United States reaching out to some of the other, alliance partners that is including Australia and Japan. So from that point of view, possibly a very significant meeting because it will possibly signify how India-US relationships will move from here on, sir.
Vinay, as far as the COVID-19 concerns are concerned, and more importantly now with travel opening up, vaccine diplomacy, vax passports, and how nations are choosing to use this, and sometimes it becomes a case of using it against each other here. How is that going to be resolved between the four nations here?
Well, I mean, I think for India, the bigger concern was possibly how the UK positioned itself, because that's been a bit of a concern. There are talks that are still going on. In fact, the UK High Commissioner and the Indian authorities have been in talks. And in that sense, they have decided to change the policy, but it still doesn't help India. So we have a much bigger problem with the United Kingdom in terms of them having some issues with our CoWIN platform, which they claim that they are talking with the NHS and the Indian CoWIN authorities are talking to each other to try and resolve that. But yes, the issue of global travel and the acceptance of vaccines globally, including other countries, is also something that will certainly come up. Remember, India has positioned itself, at least the Modi government has attempted to position itself as a global supplier of vaccines, a fact that has become debatable. People have been critical of that particular policy back home. India, in fact, under pressure from the domestic voices when we had our second wave, we stopped doing the vaccine diplomacy, which has now been restarted. So obviously, all of those issues will possibly come up, including another important aspect linked to COVID, but not entirely linked to COVID, is about the access of Indian students and the Indian diaspora in the United States. Because remember, the visa issue is also one important issue that we have been concerned about in the last couple of years, so insofar as the U.S. is concerned.
Managing Editor Vinay Tiwari, many thanks for getting us up to date on a larger insight here on all that is to be taken up in these discussions here tonight. Remember, two important meetings there that are to take place here later this evening. Meanwhile, there's also been a response from the BJP here, which has come in regarding Prime Minister Modi's US visit here, sending in an unambiguous message to the world that India and the US remain strong strategic partners. Take a listen in.
Very busy day for Prime Minister, but very eventful and giving very unambiguous message not only to India and US but also overall world that India, Australia and US not only remain as a strong strategic partner, but they have commonality and they are in sync on several global issues which are facing right now to the universe.